As knife enthusiasts, we always seem to talk about what type of lock is strongest, but no one really talks about which one's going to last the longest. We're going to get into that and more on today's episode of Knife AQ number 202 of the series where I answer all your questions, sharp or dull. Hey everyone, David C. Anderson from the KnifeCenter. That's Thomas, as always, behind the camera, still recovering from the SHOT Show-itis. Gravelly. Welcome. If you're new to this series, what we do is we take your questions and we pull them from the comments below these videos. So if you've got a question, you think it's worthy of inclusion, drop it below. Maybe it'll get featured in a future episode. Today's first question comes from Cody Cohen, and it's a long one, but not too long, it's fine. Hey DCA, I have a funny feeling I'm overthinking this. Hey, we're nerds, that's what we do. But I'm gonna go ahead and ask it anyway. I have seen a few videos and posts discussing the strength of knife locks. I am one for long-term investments, so as important as lock strength is, isn't lock durability also important? Short answer, yes. What I'm afraid of is spending money on a knife to use every day and the lock components give out over time. I know the quick and easy answer is to get a pocket fixed blade. Also yes. I do have one, but more often than not, I'm needing something more discreet, such as for at work or when doing activities with my kids. Do you have any knowledge of what lock has the most long-term durability, or is there a way to even test that? In terms of actual testing, I don't know that anyone actually has done that specifically, so we just have to kind of rely on anecdotal and real-world observations. I can say for me personally, I've seen some folks with old, I'm talking about some of like my farmer friends who have been carrying like a buck 110 for literal decades. And I don't have a buck 110, but I do have another lock backing knife right here. And they're still using the knife, even though the interface and the surfaces of the blade and or the tang have introduced a little bit of play over the years. They don't fit quite as tightly. But you know what? The lock is still working, even though it's not as, as lock tight. That's brand name, no brand names, please. But you get what I mean. So even with a little bit of blade play, that doesn't necessarily mean it's dangerous. Could it get there eventually? It's possible. One thing, or one lock that was kind of developed to address that, or at least that was addressed in part of its design brief, is Cold Steel's Triad lock, which was designed by Andrew Demko and is essentially improving upon the lock back formula. It still operates like one. You push the locking bar down just like normal, but you can actually see the difference from the outside. Check out this Spyderco right here. The blade and the back spring both meet up with each other flush, whereas there's a little bit of gap on this Cold Steel holdout right here. That's because there are a few different things going on under the hood, as they say. We have a stop pin for one thing and angled lock faces underneath. That's grossly oversimplifying things here. But this lock, not only is it one of the strongest locks on the market, it is also designed to be one of the most durable, as in longest. Durable doesn't necessarily mean longest lasting, but self-adjusting over time. So it is a very long-lasting iteration, because as things wear, there's essentially built-in play that, or built-in tolerances that allow it to stay tight, which is kind of cool. Another thing to look at would be frame locks. And I say this with a caveat, so hear me out here. I have, like lockbacks, I have seen frame locks or even liner locks, probably more often with liner locks, honestly, that have seen a ton of use, and I'm talking like years, if not decades of use, where the lock bar will go all the way over to the other side of the blade right here. Things have worn in or worn out that much that it's traveling all the way over. Like the lockbacks I've seen, you might have some wiggle, but most of the time, provided the lock bar itself is not like super thin and wedges into the gap over here, most of the time it's still gonna be okay to use as well, but not ideal, right? But frame locks do adjust over time until they run out of play. You could look at a knife like this. This is the ZT562, where you can't really see it too great. We'll get a good angle of it, but there is a steel interface that is replaceable that sits on the end of the lock bar. And you may be able to replace that actual interface piece for a fresh one, essentially. biggest caveat here being it's going to take a long time in most cases to wear out a frame lock that much. So 10, 20 or more years down the line, is the company who built the frame lock knife in the first place still going to have those parts laying around, especially if it's a discontinued model? Therein is the big caveat, of course. If you want to consider that, I would say go with somebody like Hinderer Knives, for example. This is a production version of one of their knives. They iterate over time, and I can't guarantee they're going to have parts 20 years from now, but that might be your best bet for something like that. And that replaceable part gets into the durability side of things. You think of, old like 80s Mercedes diesel cars were often described as being very durable. That didn't mean they were reliable, but it means you could fix it and you would be able to keep it going and keep it on the road. It would stay around real nicely. Which is why I would also point you potentially to crossbar locking knives like the CJRB, what is this? Crap, I forgot the name. The Hectare, sorry about that. S90V blade, fat carbon handles, about $140 right now. Is that what we're selling it for? Where'd it go? It's actually a pretty good deal, $135 for that. Anyway, and this falls into the durability thing too. Not only is the lock bar itself, you have a round lock bar pushing into the tang of the blade, not only does that self-adjust over time as, this wears a little bit and the blade tang wears a little bit, the springs are just going to push it further forward, or the lock bar can rotate a little bit and you've got fresh surfaces mating up. That's certainly going to last a long time. These springs, the Omega springs that push these forward, can fail. They're going to last not nearly as long as the hardware pieces, but that's something that even if you don't have access to an official part, can be fairly easy to replace yourself. I mean, I remember one time, the first time I had an Axis lock spring fail on me, I bent a new one. I used some guitar string that I bought down at the music store. And you can make your own Omega springs and keep the thing going long term. And I think that's at the crux of what your question is, like what is going to last? I'd say for me, I would go for something like the Triad lock or the crossbar lock. Man, me with the terms today. Interestingly, another lock that Andrew Demko designed, in addition to the Triad lock, the Scorpion lock, is also self-adjusting over time, but we only really see that on one model, the 8015, so it's hardly a broad category we can speak of. Cool knife, though. Very cool knife. Next question comes from Krzyzewicz. Let me try that again. Kirst of Sankiewicz. Very sorry.
Krusty Sandwich.
Krusty Sandwich asks, hello DCA, I have some doubts related to safety in case when blade is a moving element. It's a two-part question, so we'll read them all and then we'll go over here. 1, automatic knives, specifically OTF. What would happen if a knife worn in the pocket fires accidentally? Would the force be enough to hurt a knife user? Is it even a possible scenario? I couldn't see any safety feature watching your videos. There's only a button or a slider that starts the action, but I have no OTF automatic knife, so perhaps there's something I don't know about how they work. Before we read part 2, we'll get into this one. The likelihood of a double action OTF accidentally firing open in your pocket is vanishingly slim. Like, anything can happen, but it's not going to happen. Asterisk, anything can happen. We're not lawyers. Don't come at us if something does happen. The reason for that is the safety measure is essentially in line and built in. There's a lot of travel in this switch right here, and it's always pushing back against your thumb. The likelihood of something wedging in your pocket and actually pushing that all the way out to the open position, so unlikely as it's not even worth talking about. You can see it's not until we get right up towards the end when the spring pressure has built up enough to overcome the mechanism that the blade comes open. So could it hurt someone if you opened it up like that close to skin? Yes, it certainly could. The likelihood of that happening in your pocket is not something I ever worry about. Number 2, tip up versus tip down. Greatest controversies of all time. Maybe not greatest, but yeah. Again, we're knife people, and these are the things we think about. I believe the material can wear out over the time, and at some point the detent can simply fail to keep the blade in place. In that case, we're talking about like wear over time. There's a theme here. It's almost like I did this on purpose. In that case, intuition says the safest options to wear the knife tip down is the gravity itself will work to move the blade down, which is the closed position, while tip up leads us to the problem as gravity does the opposite, rather helps with the opening of the whole thing. How does this work in real life? Again, is the scenario even close to something that actually can happen? If so, would you recommend tip up position for a knife in a pocket for someone obsessed with safety? So I have a, another anecdotal, story here, observed reality that informs my opinion on this. And it goes back to an experience my brother had with an old knife of his. It was a Benchmade mini Deja Vu. We have a picture of one here. Unfortunately, I don't have one because it's a long since discontinued knife. But as a stand-in for today, we're going to use this Spyderco Polestar because it's sort of similar in size and shape. You got a hole in the blade, just like the mini Deja Vu. So that knife was a single position pocket clip. It was tipped down, right side only, and he actually had the knife. It had a fairly weak detent, if I remember correctly, and the blade indeed did come open in his pocket and was kind of sitting like there. He reached in for something, grabbed his keys, and wound up raking a big cut along the side of his hand right there because the blade was hanging open. He avoids tip-down knives completely now as a result, and although I don't think of it in that terms personally, I also tend to, I don't think I have any knives set up in tip-up carry or tip-down carry. All my knives are carried tip-up. And the reason I'm not worried about it, in addition to most of the knives tend to have strong enough detents, is the most natural place to wear a pocket knife in your pocket, at least as far as I've seen, writ large, is towards the back side of your pocket. So you've got the seam of your pocket kind of keeping the blade shut as well as whatever is built into the knife. And so if it did come open, or if it did start to come open, you've got that measure there to push it back. But also, even if it is open a little bit, if you reach into your pocket, you're reaching on the other side. So not really going to have to worry about it. That's my 2 cents. Your mileage may vary. There are reasons to like a tip down pocket knife. For instance, it can often be faster to draw since you can pull it here and you just have to flip the knife like that to get it into the open position, as opposed to having to pull it like this, flip it all the way around, shift your grip up, and then move. We're talking fractions of a difference here, but for some folks, especially in tactical scenarios, that is something to think about anyway. Hope all of that helps. Well, now we come to our Damyr's Buried Treasure segment for today, where thanks to this question, several episodes ago, we're going through the alphabet of brands that we carry here at the Knife Center and picking something out that's never been seen on the channel before. And today we're on the letter T. And all of the production brands that fall under the letter T, we've actually have shown on the channel before. We got good coverage there. Actually, there's one razor company I think we haven't, but we've seen a bunch of different razors in this Buried Treasure segment because they don't often get shown as much. So I'm going to go with a custom maker, which we usually don't get to focus on this segment. Maybe we'll expand that for the next go around the alphabet. Custom makers A through Z. We're on T, and Tom Mayo is under T in our brands list, not M. So
totally counts.
Totally counts. And I've never shown a Tom Mayo custom knife on this channel. May not have even shown any Tom Mayo designs because there's not many production versions of that around anymore. Check this out. This is the large Covert, a frame locking knife with a hawkbill blade, carbon fiber front, titanium frame like there on the back. The interesting thing with this blade though is the material. It's not steel. This is 6K stellite. Now what that is, if you're unaware, is a cobalt alloy. Has really high wear resistance, great corrosion resistance, and really high lubricity, so smoother cutting than bare steel can achieve, at least on a graph. Real world, yeah, who knows for sure. You don't see this too much anymore because it is pretty hard to work with, and a lot of modern super steels can kind of outcompete this in many areas, but it's still super interesting and kind of takes us back to a certain time in the knife industry before, modern, the most modern super steels we have now, stuff like this and Talanite. Camillus used that a lot back in the day, were the real exotic stuff that people were getting really excited about. You can still get it right here with this knife. The cool thing with this right now is it's an expensive knife. That might not be the cool thing, but it's actually going for a good cause. This custom is priced right now just under $2,300, but we're going to donate all 100% of the sale of this, not just our profit margin. 100% of the sale of this to whoever buys it is going to go to St. Jude Children's Medical Hospital, Research Hospital. You know what I'm saying. Proceeds of this all 100% of the sales of this is going to go to St. Jude. So if anyone's interested, feeling a little spicy, wants a cool knife, wants to help some kids out at the same time, there you go. All right, now we come to our lightning round for today. First question comes from Hedgedidja.
Hedgehog.
HDJ,
Hedgehog 3059.
It's going to take longer to read his name than answer the question.
Lightning round, David.
I've had a CRKT S.P.E.W in my EDC rotation since 2013. Do y'all think it's still relevant, or should I upgrade? My knives are pretty much glorified letter openers at this point, and for that purpose, it works excellent. I'd say relevance has nothing to do with it. Do you still like it? Cool, use it. If not, maybe check out the Artisan Cutlery Sea Snake. There you go. Next question comes from Douglas Parker. 12C27 Sandvik, is it just as good as 14C28N or not? Neither is better. This is kind of a misnomer as well. Neither is better. They're just different. The 14C28, well, we'll start with the 12C27 on this Mora Kanzbol right here. It is tougher than 14C28N, so it can bend before breaking more, but it's not going to hold an edge quite as long. And the 14C28N will hold an edge longer. It's not quite as tough, so it depends on what you want. But this actual family of Mora knives here is a great case study in why you can't just look at steel when you're looking at the whole knife, because the 12C27 blade on the Kanzbol is thinner and is thinner out at the tip as well, thanks to this scalloped section. The Garberg here with its 14C blade is thicker. And honestly, if I were picking one of these for durability, I'd go with the Garberg in this case. It's got more chunk to it. It's got a little more strength. And I don't think the 12C27 is tougher enough to overcome that materials difference. If I wanted something to slice better, I would go with the Kanzbol though. It's got better edge geometry, or thinner edge geometry for slicing. And just like, in the strength of locks, when you have to look at things beyond just the lock face itself, like what is the blade, or what is the handle made of, how strong is the pivot, that sort of thing. Likewise here. Which one's tougher? If you were going just by steel, you might say one, but it's not all of the picture. Now we come to our final question of the day, which is, of course, our most seriousest question of the day, which comes from Rough Turtle. Most serious question. I love buying knives, and I want to gift knives to people. How do I do that without them thinking that it's weird? Well, first, you got to bring them in. You got to make eye contact. Shake their hand. Hold them there. When they try to pull away, don't let them. Keep that eye contact going. Make them look into your eyes. And definitely don't lick your lips at that point. That's what you want to do. That's all we've got for today, folks. Keep your questions and your most seriousest questions coming down below. If you've got some alternate answers or other suggestions for the folks who asked questions today, leave those in the comments as well. What's your favorite lock? It's an easy question, right? What's your favorite blade lock, and does it stand the test of time in your opinion? If you want to get your hands on any of these knives, check out the links in the description, and they'll take you to KnifeCenter.com, where you can break things up into easier payment chunks with our new Sezzle payment options if you wish. And also don't forget about our long-running Knife Rewards program so you can earn some free money on a future knife. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. That's Thomas behind the camera, and we're signing off. See you next time.